Hello young learners. Today we are enjoying the fruits of freedom because of the sacrifice of hundreds and thousands of freedom fighters against the British rule in India. There was a similar struggle of the blacks against the white rule in South Africa. Let us know more about this from the lesson Nelson Mandela, A Long Walk to Freedom. This is the second lesson in the NCERT textbook, First Flight. Nelson Mandela, A Long Walk to Freedom. Now this lesson is an extract from his autobiography, Long Walk to Freedom. In this extract, which we have in our textbook, Nelson Mandela speaks about a historic occasion, the inauguration, which took place on 10th May 1994. Let us discuss the main points of this lesson. Nelson Mandela's inauguration as the first black president of South Africa. Nelson Mandela was a part of the African National Congress, which won the elections, the first democratic election in South Africa after 3 centuries of whites' rule. Mandela became the first president after more than 3 centuries of white rule. These ceremonies took place at the sandstone amphitheatre formed by the Union Buildings in Pretoria. Now, in his inaugural speech, Nelson Mandela hails the spirit of equality, freedom, and human dignity. He says that it was a privilege to host the international dignitaries who have come all over to South Africa to attend this inauguration ceremony. He thanks all of these people for their support to the anti-apartheid movement. Apartheid is a system of discriminating people as per the color of their skin or racial discrimination. Now this system, apartheid system, was prevailing in South Africa for a very long period of time. Mandela pledges on this occasion to liberate all his people from the clutches, from the bondage of poverty, deprivation, suffering, gender and other discrimination. He promises all his people that they are going to live a totally free life then after. On this occasion, he remembers the sacrifices of the hundreds of thousands of people because of whose sacrifices today they had received this freedom. And he also regrets, he feels sorry that he could not thank all these people, all the comrades as he calls them. He could not thank all these people because they have already laid their lives for the freedom struggle. And he also feels sorry because these people were not alive to witness the freedom of the blacks or the colored people in South Africa. Further, he talks about the positive and negative outcomes of apartheid, of this oppression. Now you might wonder, it is a negative thing. Apartheid system is a negative thing. What could be a positive outcome from such a thing as an apartheid system? Let's see. This tells us about Nelson Mandela's outlook towards world at large. Let us see. The negative thing of the system was that it left a long lasting hurt and wounds in the minds of people of South Africa, and it would take a lot of time to recover from these wounds. And according to Mandela, the positive thing is that it produced great leaders who were full of courage, wisdom and generosity. He says that they were suppressed to such an extent that these leaders were born out of this suppression. Further, he talks about the twin obligations and limitations of people. Now, what are the twin obligations every person feels? Let us see. Every person experiences these two obligations. One is the personal obligation towards one's family, towards his parents, towards his wife, children, family at large. This is the personal obligation. And the second obligation is the political obligation. This is towards his people, towards his community and towards his country. So these are the two obligations every person has, whichever country he belongs to. One towards the family and the other towards the country. But Mandela says that in a country like South Africa, a person cannot satisfy both these obligations. Why? Because if a person stepped out of his personal limitations, his family, he would be severely punished and isolated. Let us see in his own words. It was impossible for a man of his color and birth to fulfill both these obligations because they were severely punished and isolated the moment they crossed their private space and began to question the racial discrimination. You just start talking about racial discrimination, you question someone, and where would you land up? In the prisons. You would be forced to be separated from your family, and then you cannot satisfy your obligation towards your family, you cannot satisfy your obligation towards your country as well. So twin obligation is something which is very difficult in a country like South Africa. Now let us also get to know Nelson Mandela's insightful observations about courage, love and hate, oppressor and the oppressed. Let us see his views, his ideas about these few things. According to Mandela, what is courage? Courage was not the absence of fear, but the triumph over it. According to him, a brave man is not he who does not feel afraid, but he who conquers that fear. So that is his definition, Mandela's definition about courage. Let's understand the terms love and hate according to Mandela. Mandela says that a person is born with love in his heart. It is a natural emotion, whereas people must learn to hate. He further adds, if a person can learn to hate, he can as well learn to love, because it is easier, as it's a very natural emotion. Love comes more naturally to the human heart than its opposite. That is Nelson Mandela's idea about love and hate. Now let's move on to his ideas or observations about the oppressor and the oppressed. He says that if a man hates some other person, if he tries to take away the freedom of another person, then he says that he himself is a prisoner of hatred. He is locked up behind the chains of hatred, behind the bars of prejudice, of narrow-mindedness. And a man who takes away someone else's freedom is also not free. So he says that the oppressor as well as the oppressor, both of them need to be liberated. Both of them are suffering and they need to be liberated, he says. Now let's understand from which moment Nelson Mandela started experiencing this hunger for freedom. Since when he wanted to fight for freedom? Let's move on. Let us understand his at different stages of his life, he had different definitions of freedom. Let us go into the details.